I forgot my question. I'm intrigued by the whole idea of storytelling, and I wondered, just to get into the storytelling concept, what's the structure of a good story then? You're talking stories and they're impacting. There must be a structure, there must be a process that you can tap into and create something, very easily, hopefully more easily.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to, in a moment, I'm going to throw a slide about what makes a story compelling. But this is a different question. The structure of a story, well, the most obvious structure is the hero's journey. The hero leaves home and goes on this journey and meets the monsters along the way, defeats them, and then returns home victorious and finds that home has changed. But of course, home hasn't changed, he has changed. So the hero's journey is kind of like a classic, narrative structure. But I don't feel very fulfilled in telling you that answer because I don't think that's enough. So let me tell you more. And I want to give reference to a wonderful book called Resonance by Nancy Duarte, this is a book everybody should read. It's just phenomenal. And she's an expert in presentation. Her name is Nancy Duarte, D-U-A-R-T-E. And she talks about structure for the purpose of presentation and, of course, the storytelling structure. And she's done an amazing study to try and trace a structure that works to make presentation and stories compelling. And she examines stories like the I Have a Dream speech. And she examines stories like Steve Jobs' presentation of iPhone, that amazing, look it up on YouTube, it's an amazing presentation. And what she came up with was this kind of going back and forth, if you look at it on a graph, between where we are now, which is kind of the present state, and where we want to be, which she calls the new bliss, or the place that's ideal. And what happens is a good story gets you going back and forth between those places. This is really good for presentation, it's also really good for stories. Because what people want is to get to that new bliss. If you're marketing your business, you want to be able to promise them the transformation. Nobody wants coaching. Does everybody know that? Nobody wants coaching, they want the transformation. This is huge, it's so important in your marketing. Nobody wants to know about your process. We fall in love with our process as coaches. We love our process because we know it works and because we created it. Or we read everybody else's process and then we came up with something new. We love it. But nobody cares. Our clients don't care. They want the outcome. They want the transformation. And while we spend all this time marketing our process, they don't care. Because if you go up to anybody who's having the worst challenges in their life and say, would you like a coach? They'll say no. Say to them, do you want to have a good relationship? Oh, yeah. Do you want to build your... Yeah. Do you want to do that? Yeah. They want the transformation. So what happens with the structure, and I hope I'm giving a bit of a convoluted answer here, but the structure here goes between where you are right now and where they want to get to, this transformation. And the going back and forth creates the gap or the demand. And when you can accurately articulate the difference between where they are and where they want to get in your story, they naturally and instinctively realize that you're the person to get them there. So basically, the story has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. It sounds very obvious, but you'll be surprised how many people forget to tell part of it. I had a client recently, I said to her, so what's your story? And she told me about her life story. It was quite lengthy, but she left out 30 years. 30 years! She said, oh yeah, for that time I did this. And then she went on to tell me something else. And I went, whoa, you left out the middle. I got the beginning and I got the end. What's the middle? And that, of course, is where the challenges were. So, has that even vaguely answered your question? I hope it's given some information along the way. Yes, go ahead, sir.
I was just thinking back to your report this morning, talking about the grow model.
Sorry.
I was thinking about John Whitmore this morning and talking about the grow model and saying it actually is a framework, it's just a chronological framework. And you saying then, this is about, so what's your goal, where do you want to be, and actually where are you now? And rather than it being purely a progression, it is flipping maybe back between the two, so checking in and gradually beginning to share the relationship between the two and the possibility of moving from one to the other.
Absolutely. Absolutely, because in a sense that's the story. I mean, when I work with my clients, we create a whole long story, and the story is our coaching process. And that story shifts and changes all the time, and it's going back and forth between where they are and where they want to be. But it's this narrative, and it's this play going back and forth, and it has to be fluid. It has to be fluid, but it's based on the core competencies. It's based on asking the powerful questions, and it's based on creating the safe space, and it's based on really actively listening, but it's co-creating this beautiful story of what can be. And because it's a story, when I put up that slide that I forgot earlier on about why do we tell stories, well, we tell them because people love to hear stories. I've yet to meet someone who doesn't like to hear a well-told story. People love to hear stories, and they love to create stories. And that's, that compelling factor is very, very important. So question here, yes?
Yes, thank you very much for this amazing presentation. And actually, you made me went back to my childhood when I first heard my first stories. No? And I think that the simplicity of the way you tell a story is permits to your audience to really have to travel, right? My question is about the moment you switch on PowerPoint. Was that necessary? In terms of, really, you made me travel, and actually right now you switched off PowerPoint, and I'm again, having my journey.
Okay.
Was this that indispensable?
Well, that's a great question. I have to tell you that up until 6 weeks ago, I presented at the ICF presentation in Romania. And my guidance there was a wonderful, wonderful conference. And it was mostly business people and some coaches, because the coaching industry is quite young in Romania. And when I was there, my wonderful host said to me, a few weeks before, he said to me, people really like PowerPoint here, and you should bring PowerPoint, just to keep them focused. Because I had said, I literally for years have not used PowerPoint. So how many people here think I need to use PowerPoint?
Thank you.
And now I've got the lights on. Hang on. See, this is technology. Stop. Can somebody come here and turn this off, please?
Turn off the projector.
Turn off the projector. Somebody come and turn off the projector? Okay. Thank you. Gosh, I feel free. I think I should take off my shoes. The first time I got on stage to tell a story professionally, it was actually, to make matters worse, it was in Hebrew, and it terrified me. I had an audience of about 100 people, and I was very well practiced. In fact, my husband can vouch for the fact that I had told the story probably 1,000 times, and I think he knew it as well as I did, just to learn it so well. And I got up on stage. I was very, very nervous, but I was also strangely confident, because I felt, finally, I'm in the place I want to be. I want to tell stories. And my teacher was standing over here on the right, and she was giving me the thumbs up, and I took off my shoes, and I stood there, and I just kind of embraced the space, and I told my story. And it worked really well. I got a standing ovation. My teacher was so proud. And I stood there thinking, yes, this is what I want to do. This is great, and I am such a fake. And I'm thinking, what's that about? What's that about, the fake thing? And I sat with that for a while, and I thought, what is that about? And then I realized there was a very, very old story going on inside me. I'm the youngest of 4 children. And my sister Lynn, who's the one next to me, is 3 years older than me. She was always a great, great joker as a child. She was the actress. She said that when she grew up, she wanted to be on stage. She was the actress. And of course, although I secretly really wanted to do something like that, there's only room for one actor in a family, right? So I'd gone through life feeling that, Lynn was the one who needed to be on stage. Now, she had gone into corporate America. She's doing extremely well. And was the furthest she could possibly get from stage. And she admitted to me that she gets, sick with fright when she has to talk to her team, But here I was on stage doing what I was just put on this earth to do, feeling like I was an absolute fake because of a very old story. So I got rid of that story. I'd like to invite you to go into your stories and to figure out what stories are serving you, what stories are so old you just need to let go, and what stories are the ones you need to be telling more. Any other questions before I go on? So I want to talk to you a little bit about what makes a compelling story. And then I want us to do a little exercise. And the compelling story really is, and I just, I have a slide, which I'm not going to use. It's 5 words, and it's very simple. You make your story personal. You make it specific. And you make it descriptive. So you don't tell a story about, oh, once I went to that place, wherever it was. You say it was in 1997, and I was living in Prague, and I was 47 years old, and I had chronic headaches. And on this particular day, I went for a walk in the park. I just made that up. Now, you get specific. You give descriptions, you give details, because people are compelled, because everybody has had a headache. And everybody has gone for a walk in the park, and everybody thinks, wow, where was I in 1997? And have I ever visited Prague? It creates all these connections. And when you get specific and descriptive, you create connections with your audience or with your client, and that's what creates, that's another core competency, growing the client-coach relationship. You notice this keeps popping up. Another thing that makes your stories compelling is to make it emotional, to put your emotions in there. Now, I have to make a distinction between becoming emotional and invoking emotion in your audience. And it's a tricky thing to do. I actually work in Israel with some coexistence between Arabs and Jews on being able to tell your story. My great belief is that if you can listen to somebody else's story, you can recognize how more alike you are than disalike. And so there's this thing about being able to tell your story and to be able to invoke emotion in your client, in your audience, without getting overcome with the emotion yourself. It's not easy, but it's really, really important. If you can tell a story about your struggle and tell it from a place of empowerment, then it gives great hope and it gives great inspiration. And that's really worthwhile doing. And then the final thing for the final piece on making the story compelling is, of course, making it authentic. It has to be yours, or a story of somebody that you know. And there's a lot of talk about storytelling. I mentioned earlier this idea that you tell a story to tell a lie. I'm not talking about those kind of stories. I'm talking about the stories that are true to us. I don't have a problem telling personal stories. There are stories, of course, I can't tell, or I won't tell, or I don't want to share. The stories that I choose to share are ones that are true. And people say to me all the time, particularly kids, is that story true? I mean, the one with the flying snake, is that true? And I say, yes, every story is true, and I believe that in the heart of hearts. When it comes to the flying snake, I believe it's true because once upon a time, somebody saw a really big snake, maybe coming down a wall or a tree. And then when he told his friend, it was huge, and when he told his friend, it was even more big. And when he told the next friend, it had wings, and suddenly it became a flying snake. But the original guy saw a huge snake, it was true. And when we tell our stories in a coaching context, when we listen to our clients' stories, we're listening for the authenticity, we're listening for the truth of the emotion. When I tell my personal stories, I sometimes don't even remember if every single detail is true, because I'm telling you from the truth of the emotion and the truth of the experience. It doesn't really matter what year it was. It doesn't really, my husband will probably argue with that. It doesn't really matter, what color the wallpaper was. What matters is that I'm telling it from this place of authenticity of experience and of emotion and of response. So here's the bit where you guys get involved. And I actually am going to put up, no I'm not because it's gone. Okay, there's 3 parts of this exercise. I want you to create little groups of about 4 or 5 people, okay? And I want you to simply tell each other a story of the best coaching experience you have ever had, okay? Now, just bear with me for 1 minute while I give you some guidance on this. It doesn't have to be working with a coach. It could have been an experience you had where your father coached you to do something, or where a friend provided a coaching experience for you. What I want you to do is share a coaching experience that was exceptional for you. We don't have much time. I'm conscious of the fact that you guys had breakfast probably about 7:30 and it's now really late. So let's just try and do this fast. What I want you to do is 2 parts to this. The first part is to share the story. The second part is to find the characteristics that are the same with all 4 stories that you tell each other. Okay, so that means you're going to come up with a couple of different words. And the words might be something like, Well, it doesn't matter, you'll figure it out. Okay, so tell each other the story. Make it a short story, concise. I'm just going to give you 10 minutes to do this. To tell each other the story, and then to come up with the words that describe the characteristics that are in common. Okay? Yes, question. You as a person who has been influenced by somebody who has coached you. Yes. Thank you.